welcome again to our webinar. We are going to be chatting through skills that every leader should develop for inclusive leadership. This is a topic that I'm really passionate about, and I hope that you as a business owner or anybody really who is watching this webinar live with us or even the replay can take something from this and apply it to your leadership toolkit. So just as an introduction, my name is Hannah Hood. I am a virtual CFO here at Summit Virtual CFO by Anders. I am also the co-host to the podcast, The Young CPA Success Show. Y'all may not be our target audience, but we do cover topics like this that I feel like everybody can get value from as well. Io, you can go to the next couple and you can go past that one. Awesome. I'm just going to cover a couple of housekeeping items. Just please use the question function in this Zoom session. Io and I will cover your questions as you ask them. I will be sure to get those covered and answered for you. And if you're watching the replay, certainly feel free to drop those in the comment section as well. A replay for our live attendees of this webinar, along with the slides, will be sent to you within 2 business days after the event. Now, I do want to give y'all a little bit of background about us as a firm, so that way you know who we are, where we're coming to you from. As a firm, we started as a traditional CPA firm. We did tax, we did audit for our clients, we billed our clients hourly. That was started by Jody Grundon and Adam, who you see in this picture respectively. In 2004, they started offering CFO and back office accounting services. In 2013, we shifted to a fully distributed firm, which was really, they were ahead of their time in terms of on the remote working wave. In 2022, Summit joined Anders CPAs and Advisors via a merger. And so we now have a hybrid workforce, as the firm that was traditionally Summit CPA Group all works remotely. We also have people who work boots on the ground in our St. Louis office, as well, offering our CFO and back office accounting services. So that's a little about us. But as you can tell, I am joined today by our presenter, Io Awadunni. He is the Director of Training and Development at Prime Target Solutions. So Io, I am so excited to have you here with us. I'm going to let you introduce yourself and give us a little bit more about your background, and I can't wait to hear what you have to share with us.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Hannah. Good afternoon, everyone. And good morning if you're in a completely different time zone. It's a great pleasure being here with you today. Today, we're going to be talking about 6 skills, every leader should develop for inclusive leadership. My name is Io Awadunni. As Anna mentioned, I work with Prime Target Solutions, and I also am a VP of Inclusive Leadership at a consultant firm called Eagles Flight. So if you're wondering why do they have 2 different slides, that is why. I was born and raised in Lagos, Nigeria. I moved to North America. I currently live in Canada, but I moved North America in 2016. And interestingly, in my short 7 years, I've been fired twice in my
It's an interesting fact to include in your intro there.
And I will be sharing more about that and why I think that is really important. I'm actually also a city councilor in the city of Kitchener. So we're going through our budgeting season at this point in time. So that's always a lot of readings, and I don't know if that's exciting for CPAs and people in the finance industry. Gives the rest of us headaches, I'll tell you that. And I sit on several boards as well. I'm the author of this book, Inclusive Leadership: The Immigrant View. And the reason why I felt this was important to also share was just to give us all a background on. I share my story in the past few years of being here in North America. And I believe that what you see for the rest of the day actually all come from the book. Yes, I'm providing stories from the immigrant perspective, but a large majority of it also impacts members of your team, members of your community, members of the organizations that you do work with who are diverse and who are looking for inclusive leaders like you. to be able to implement some behaviors and some practices within your organization. So I will get started, and Anna, just jump in whenever you want. And
Yeah.
remember, to all of you as well, if you have any questions, any concerns, any issues, just let me know, and we'll try to run through it as best as possible. So I'm going to be sharing some numbers with you at the beginning of this. And I remember the first time I had a chance, Hannah, by the way, to go on your website, there was a particular phrase that I saw there: achieve your highest potential, right there,
Mm.
bam, at the center. And
Hmm.
I thought about that. And for those that are here, our goal is to ensure that you are achieving your highest potential as an organization, as an individual, but then you're able to do that for people in your organization, the employees and those that you work with, the stakeholders that you work with as well. The first number is 34%. And this is tagged to 34% waste. What is the background behind this? Liz Wiseman, the author of the book Multipliers, did this research. And they met with several leaders just like you and asked a lot of questions when it came to leadership, employee engagement, employee conversations. And at the end of their in depth research, they discovered that organizations are only tapping into 66% of their people's potential. In other
Mm, that's
words,
an
there's a,
interesting statistic.
yeah, in other words, there's a 34% waste that is, we're not fully tapping into. So if we're looking to achieve highest potential, we should pay attention for the rest of our seminar because, or webinar rather, because this is an area that we need to tap further into. Okay, you don't want to leave 34% at the table. You want to be able to achieve as best. I mean, attain as grab as best as possible from people so that they can produce the greatest output as well. The second number is 50%. All right, and in this one, several leaders were asked the question, and I'm going to ask you the question as well so you can all think about it as we go through. And they said, think about a leader that you've worked with, a leader that you just cannot stand. You know, the one that you're walking down the street, you see them, you cross to the other side of the street, or you're at the water cooler, or you're grabbing coffee and they start approaching and you walk away from the water cooler. You know, those types of individuals that they're called diminishers. And usually when I do this at seminars or at training sessions, you can actually see people start squeezing their
Oh,
faces.
yeah. Like I am thinking of some very specific people that I have worked for that fit the bill for what you're saying.
Like there's always a name or a group of people that pop into people's minds. These individuals that were asked this question were asked the second question on a scale of a 0 to 100. 0 being your output is completely not there. You're not even really producing. 100 being like you are bringing your all every single day, achieving your fullest potential, extremely productive. They asked them from 0 to 100. Where do you think you fall in terms of your productivity scale regularly while working with that individual? An individual said between 20 to 50%. I want you to think
Wow.
about that simply because of a leader, 20 to 50%. They asked the same set of individuals a different question. Think about a leader that you've worked with that, you know, brought out the best in you, that really inspired you, that coached you, that encouraged you. You know, that person that, you know, you start to smile when I start to share about some of those qualities. Usually one or two people tend to come into our minds. And they asked them the same set of questions around 0 to 100%. And then suddenly they asked them that question, and people said 70 to 100% in terms of productivity, in terms of outputs. Think about that 50% gap between the first question and the first set of leaders and the second question and the second set of leaders.
And you know, one thing that I talk to my clients about often as their CFO are different levers that they can pull in their business and that they have at their dispense and that they can control and things that they can do. This is one that I think is not talked about enough is this
Mm,
lever in terms of how well are you as a leader doing the work that you need to do to be able to tap into someone's potential. So I love that. Obviously, I'm an accountant. So like I love
mm.
that you put some numbers behind these pieces, but these are absolutely such great statistics to talk about.
Yeah, really, really, so important. So as you were sharing, what can we learn from this? Number one, we're not fully maximizing potential of people that are working with us. And number two, we can maximize potential. We can achieve our high potentials by simply changing how we lead as individuals. And this is something that we can control. I'm not talking about the culture in the organization yet. I'm not talking about the systems. I'm not talking about what is outside of your control. I'm talking about what is within our control, what we have the power to do. And that is simply changing how we lead. And inclusive leadership is a great way to be able to do that and do it very well. So let me talk about the Zoom call that started it all. The call that started my me initiating the book and going into running these types of sessions. I've never been someone that enjoyed the diversity and inclusion space. I've always been in building cultures, leadership development, that type of thing. But I was on a Zoom call once, and an individual who has a background, he has started several businesses in a country that he was in before he moved to Canada. He We were on a Zoom call once, and he asked a very interesting question. He said, "Why do I have to pretend to be dumb? Why do I have to lower my intellect when I'm having conversations with my colleagues at the workplace?" And he said, "I've had to do it for 2 years, and it's so frustrating. There are things that I know that I cannot share because it seems that people are offended because I don't look the part, but I know the part." I don't know if that makes sense. And
Mm-hmm.
it was a very awkward conversation because I was the only Black person in the room. Everyone else
Mm-hmm.
was Caucasian. And he was talking about the Caucasians that he works with in the office. And for me, we all try to encourage, we all try to, encourage him through that process, provide some tips. But I understood where he was coming from because that was exactly how I felt in 2016 and 2017, coming into Canada, moving over to North America, coming in with years of experience. I've started my own company. I own my own consultant firm. I've done so much back home. Um, Coming here and then having to go through that shock factor where it seemed people were shocked that I was adding value, or I wanted to add value, or I had knowledge. In fact, I remember someone actually saying to me, "What makes you think we don't know what we're doing here?" When I never made a comment saying that you don't know what you're doing here. And it
Mm-hmm.
really just challenged me to think, is there a way that both sides can come together where one side can appreciate the value the other side is bringing, and the other side is also gracious enough to be able to help that other individual? And we meet somewhere in the middle saying we both want the same thing. We want our organization to succeed. And I need your experience, and I need your experience, and we need to bring it together so that we can do a lot more. That was what led me to writing. That was what led me to actually creating this, because I feel this is an area that we are not tapping into as organizations, and we can do so much more around this. Any thoughts, Hannah, before I move on?
Yeah, I wonder, do you feel like empathy plays a role in how you come to the table in terms of, like you said, like there's value on both sides, but obviously that takes taking a step back and being able to like truly go into that conversation with an open mind, with no preconceived expectations for that person or whatever the outcome of the conversation is going to be. So,
Mm-hmm.
do you feel like empathy like plays a role in this setting?
Absolutely. Without connection, there is no empathy.
Mm-hmm.
Without empathy, you're not going to be able to see things. You're not going to meet at the middle, and without doing that, you're not really going to move forward. Just this morning, I was with a client, and I ran a 2-hour session with them on psychological safety, and they've been having a tough time as an organization because half the organization is mad and upset that they feel marginalized and they want their voices to be heard. And the other half are very happy working in the organization. They rated the organization excellent and everything, so they don't see a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So, as a consultant coming in, it's very hard to say, "Hello, you are all doing very well. That's great. The 95% are happy. How do we help the 5% join the 95% so we can move forward? How can the 95% empathize with the 5? And how can the 5% also empathize with the 95? Because they're not
Sure.
dealing with this issue as well." And I repeated it. This is the fourth session I've had with them. Until both sides are able to meet in the middle and say, "How do we work well together?" as an organization, you're stunting your growth, you're holding yourself back
Mm-hmm.
significantly.
And as a leader, which is specifically who we're talking to here, like that
Mhm.
is you. I feel passionate that leaders need to take the driver's seat on that and
Absolutely.
initiating that piece.
Absolutely. You're very, very right about that. There are different types of diversity, and I just want to acknowledge that. And yes, I might share stories from a quote unquote newcomer status perspective. There are so many other areas of diversity that can add value to your organization. And I have a friend who is um, he's starting a credit union simply focused on Black folks in a particular province here in Canada. And he's been approached by four other credit unions now who want to buy him, buy it off
Mm-hmm.
even before it starts. And when he asked them, why are you approaching me? Their response is, we have not done a good job tapping into this market and we don't know how to. So we would like your help in doing it. So we would like to, white label and do all of those fancy schmancy things. And he said, you have had staff members in your organization that are of my color, but
Mm-hmm.
you didn't see it then. Suddenly you see the potential and you see the billions of dollars that could be tapped into. Now you want to approach me because I'm on the outside, but you never
Because it's
valued those that are
competition
on
at
the
that
inside.
point. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. But the people that were within that have probably shared this idea over and over again, we have just brushed them aside and not paid attention to them, even though they've shared these ideas with us. So there are different types of diversity, and we as leaders need to be able to see them, identify, and understand the type of value that they can bring to the table as well. So let's just quickly look at North Star, and then I want to go into what are the things, six skills. I'm sure you've heard this many times before. Why is this whole conversation around inclusion important? It's all this stuff that we're talking about. Oh gosh, it's annoying. I'm tired of people talking about it. There is a reason why. McKinsey did a study of over 1,000 companies in a dozen different countries. United States was one of them, Canada, United Kingdom, Brazil, Australia, and several others. And they discovered companies in the top quartile that had more ethnic and cultural diversity outperformed those in the fourth quartile by 36% in profitability. And Hannah, I can ask your clients, what would you like to do with 36% more money coming in? That's an opportunity for, dividends for shareholders. It's an opportunity for you to be able to bring more money into the organization. Like there's so much you can do with more money. There is a competitive edge that can provide that for you.
I really love that this statistic ties directly to the first statistic that you talked
Mm-hmm.
into in terms of that untapped potential in your people and how that is a direct correlation to not just your top revenue, but your profitability in your company. Like
Absolutely.
that's massive. And that is something that you as a leader can do for your business.
Absolutely. Boston Consulting Group felt that, hey, McKinsey's not going to be the only one to do the study. We're going to do our study. They did theirs in 2018, also 1,000 different companies in 8 different countries. And they discovered companies with more diverse management teams have 19% higher revenues due to innovation.
Wow.
Just simply because other people with, whether it's the thinking hat, whether it is a newcomer coming in and seeing a potential for immigrants that others have not seen. There's so many different ways and areas that people can bring these things to the table that can provide much more revenue for the organization. Here's the final one. Hewitt, Marshall, and Sherbin. Diverse companies are 45% more likely to report that they captured a large portion of the market, 70% more likely to have entered a new market in the past year, simply because they had diverse people within their organizations. But may I submit to you that diversity is only potential power? What do I mean by that? When I share these numbers, I think what people automatically think is, oh, great, just hire a bunch of Black people, hire a bunch of different people with different thinking hats, bring them all into a room, boom, all those numbers are supposed to come up. Absolutely not. I read this in a book called Inclusive Leadership, by Charlotte Sweeney, and she shares 2 graphs that I think are really powerful. The first graph, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but the first graph here shows homogenous teams that are very well managed. At the onset, productivity goes up very quickly. And I'm sure you know that why that is, Hannah. They probably love the same baseball team. They take their kids ice hockey together. I don't know if you have ice hockey in your end. It's big here in Kitchener.
So we actually
And
don't. So to
oh,
here
okay.
would be, it would definitely be baseball and football. Yeah.
Okay,
There you go.
baseball, football, it could be all those things. Like there is that initial connection that can bring the people together. Well, what tends to happen? Just like the credit union that had a conversation with my friend, they have plateaued for about 4 or 5 years now, and they're just looking for a new way to move up.
Mm-hmm.
However, when you think of diverse teams, by the way, that are well managed, initially it is hard. Why? Because I'm from Nigeria. My English is slightly different from Hannah's English. My accent could be slightly different. The way I do things might be slightly different. Or whatever. She might love baseball, and I've never played baseball in my life. All I know is cricket. And you're like, what is that?
Exactly.
There is all of that happening at the initial onset. So while we're going through the forming stage, it's very tough. But that's where we need you as a leader to be able to bring the people together, to be able to get them to learn more about one another, understand one another. And when they go through the storming stage, it's also tough. However, as time goes on, when this team is well managed, performance can reach a much higher level. And that's why I feel, for example, sorry, I keep using that credit union as an example.
No, I think it's a
Um,
great one.
for them, it's like it is easier just to buy you out, or it
Mm-hmm.
is easier to approach you and say, you go build it and develop it, and you be under our brand, rather than let me manage a team that can actually do this and go through that tough period of the forming and the storming and the norming stage. Like, we don't
Mm-hmm.
want that. We just want performance. So we're just going to buy you out later on or whatever.
Do you think long term that makes a difference in overall performance and success of the company overall, just from a diversity inclusion like standpoint? If you like, kind of like in the example that you just said, if they're going into it saying, hey, like, you've already done the work, we're just going to buy you out, and we're going to have tapped into this market that you've already built out for us, versus the company who says, no, like, we're going to start this from the ground up with internal people because they've brought us these concerns and we want to build this out. Do you think that there's a correlation between the two in terms of the long-term success?
I believe that, I mean, if you buy organizations, I mean, as you all probably know, through mergers and acquisitions is always a great way to grow. But one of the key problems that mergers and acquisitions also face and hit is culture, because
Yeah.
now you're trying to force and merge two cultures. And there are many times, and there's statistics, and people can argue for both sides, but there's statistics that tends to talk about how mergers and acquisitions long term tend to struggle to really achieve their fullest potential, because you're forcing two cultures, you're forcing them to merge. And it tends to create a lot of issues and concerns when it comes to the culture aspect. When you're able to build it from within, it is hard at the onset. um, there's so much that you need to work out as time goes on. People are going to argue, they're going to disagree. I don't believe we're all going to sit around and sing kumbaya with one another, even though
Sure.
I don't know all the verses to kumbaya, but I don't believe that's going to happen. I think people are going to have issues and they're going to clash. You have people with different types of personalities, but if you're able to work through it, those numbers can be achieved where you're
I think
looking
that's a
for
really
can
good
be achieved.
cautionary tale for a business owner that might be considering a merger or an acquisition, that just to weigh it all out, like to see this from
Right.
all sides in terms of what that could potentially mean. That it doesn't mean that it's necessarily bad. You just need to go into that with eyes wide open in terms of what that means and the work you have to do as a leader for that.
Absolutely. Remember, there are going to be two people who are probably applying for the same position at
Mm-hmm.
different levels of the organization. You're going to have to be ready to really work on the culture. Like, you
Mm-hmm.
got to put in a lot of work long term through that. So I'm going to skip this for now, and move over to the key qualities of an inclusive leader. I'm going to walk through 6 of them. But before we do that, I want to just share a quick story of Kobe Bryant with you that I think is so phenomenal that I think we can all learn from. In 2009, Kobe Bryant he plays for the used to play rather for the Los Angeles Lakers. They won the 2009 NBA championship. So in other words, they were the best team in the NBA. Kobe Bryant won the MVP award, the most valuable player award. So think about that. He's the best player, on the best team across um, the entire NBA. Ideally, when you're sitting on top of the world like that, I don't know about you, Hannah. I would love to eat ice cream every day, sit back, relax, maybe just watch Netflix for a few weeks, tell
Yeah.
people how great I am, like Muhammad Ali would do, and wait for the next season. But you'll be shocked a few weeks after winning the championship and winning the award, Kobe Bryant started to think about what can I do to get better. And he reached out to a former NBA player by the name of Hakeem Olajuwon and said, "Hey, I notice I have a weakness in this area. Can you coach me and train me? And I will pay you so that I can grow in that area." Of course, the player was shocked like anyone else. You are just MVP. You are the best player on the best team in the entire, we might argue, say world at that point. Why are you looking to grow? I wanted to share that because of that mindset, that growth mindset, and that mindset of constant, never ending improvements. And I hope as I share these 6 things with you, you can also think in that way. Okay, I'm doing very well in this area. What can I do to get better? How can I move it up an extra inch? I'm a 4.5 out of 5. Great. How do we make it a 5 out of a 5? I'm a 5 out of a 5. I don't need to listen to this. No. How do we make it a 5.2 or something? Like, how do we constantly grow and have that mindset, just like Kobe Bryant, constant, never ending improvements? So, with that, let's go through each area. The first behavior or skill is willing to be courageous. In my opinion, this is probably the toughest one to go through.
Hmm.
I saw this quote from HBR.com that I think is really powerful. It says, "Leaders are so terrified about messing up and saying the wrong thing to all their stakeholders, employees, board members, funders, clients, customers, or the wider world via social media that they are paralyzed into inaction."
Hmm.
In fact, the session I had earlier on today, Hannah, I had someone approach me after the session and said, "I don't feel comfortable asking this question. And I know this is like our third session. So may I ask this question one on one so I'm not seen as a racist?" And I'm like, absolutely. Thank you for finally, being courageous to ask your question. And I didn't see anything wrong with the question he wanted to ask, but he was so fearful of asking it because of how
Yeah.
we will be seen that he just kept quiet.
I think our society is like put us in this state of fear of offending someone. And so being in that state of fear has then led us just to like paralyzation when it comes to actually stepping forward and being courageous. It's fear. It's fearful. Like it can be really scary for a leader to feel like, they may say something that might offend someone. Like that's a hard place for a leader to be. Like how do they overcome that?
Yeah. It's always very tough. But may I say that the 36% in profitability, the 19% with innovation, tap it into that 34% waste, all of that is on the other side of fear.
That's such a good
If
point.
if we are too afraid, we're not going to be able to tap into all those things. So I want to challenge everyone on the call today. I want you to take a look at this picture, by the way. Like there's so much happening on the screen, and it's like, oh my gosh, I'm stretching out my hand for a handshake. He's bowing. Why is he bowing? Why is this person leaning in a bit too much? That's my personal space, lady. What's going on here? Whoa, personal space invasion. Okay, what am I supposed to do now? We are constantly trying to navigate these types of things. But the danger is when we go through this, we become cordial with people because we're afraid to cross that line or cross that boundary or whatever that is. So I want to challenge us to have courage to have tough conversations. We need courage to initiate connections with people. You need courage to get to know the other person. Yes, they look different from you, they sound different. They're a member of a completely different sexual orientation that you're used to. Their religion is different from yours, whatever. You know about the numbers that you're searching and you're looking for. You know about that competitive edge. We need to have the courage to step over. Sometimes we need the courage to make the dumb comments, apologize, and move on. Rather
Mhm.
than, oh my gosh, I don't want to offend, so I'm going to be so quiet that I'm not going to say anything, and you never connect with that individual.
That's a really good
Courage,
point, I think, too, because sometimes I think maybe we realize that we probably offended somebody, but we're too proud to own that and go to that person and say, I'm really sorry that I did not mean for that to come off the way that it did. So I think that's a very, very key thing for a leader, to be able to take ownership and just know that that might happen from time to time, but have that, like you said, that hard conversation with that person.
Absolutely. And if you're a member of a marginalized community and someone makes a dumb comments, I would like to ask that you are also gracious.
Sure.
Um,
I love that.
yes, you can point it out. Yes, you can say, hey, when you say this, that affects me, yada, yada, yada. I've had people say, oh, you're Nigerian. You must be that Nigerian prince that sends the $1 million email, or whatever it is.
Jeez.
And like, oh, come on,
Oh my
really? And people have
gosh.
said that to my face. So there are times when it's important that you challenge people and let them know that, hey, that's a microaggressive comment that offends. But it's also important that we're able to be gracious with people who are just, they have no clue, no
Mm-hmm.
idea. And you pointing it out is an opportunity for them to be able to apologize and grow and learn from that scenario. So my question is, what 2 actions can you take, dear listener, that you can take to be more courageous at the workplace moving forward? Just something for you to think about, and something to think. Remember Kobe Bryant, remember that growth mindset. Where can you be a bit more courageous? Which diverse individual do you need to have that tough conversation with? Or do you want to say, hey, I just want to grab coffee with you. Let's just grab coffee and just chat. I want to just get to know you a bit better. The next one is willing to connect. What do I mean by this? I believe trust is the foundation on which inclusive leadership is built on. If you don't have trust, nothing else is happening. Okay. Think of trust as the foundation and all this other razzmatazz as the actual house being built. The house will crumble if the foundation is not there. So let's work on the foundation. I love this story. When Sid Marshall, sorry, I'm bringing a lot of NBA stories today, but when Sid Marshall became the CEO of NBA's Dallas Mavericks, she made a commitment to meet every member of the organization in the first 90 days. And the first question she asked was, tell me your life story. Would
I love
love to
that.
get to know you. There is another company by the name of Hootsuite. There is an article, and I can send that to you, Hannah, later on, that the CEO wrote that I had a chance to read, where he said how random coffees transformed our culture. And basically, or random coffee meetings, rather, transform our culture. They set something up where people just got to know one another and they just grabbed coffee and they just had a chance to build trust with one another. Here's what I like to say: trust helps you. You build trust ahead of when problems come. All right. You
Mm-hmm.
don't start trying to build trust when there is an issue. You build beforehand, because that's the relationship bank account that you can dip into when an issue comes up. But when there is no trust, everyone is going to question your motives and nobody's going to pay attention to your intentions.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I think it's important that people think about that. The more adept leaders are becoming connected, the more influence that they can have. This is interesting. I read this in the book. Sorry, I didn't put the reference here. When Bank of America aligned team members' schedules so they could have joint coffee breaks, productivity improved by 20% and turnover decreased by 28%. I thought that was interesting. So the question for you at the end of the day is, who can you build trust with? Well, I don't know what questions to ask people. Oh, we have some here. Take a screenshot of this. There are a few here. You can blame it on me and say, hey, there is this weird guy by the name of Io that said we should try out this activity. And it's just a chance for me to build trust with people on my team. Do you mind if we can just grab coffee and just a chance for us to get to know one another? And you can pull out the questions and you ask the question. We do this regularly where we send people into breakout rooms for 3 minutes and we share this question and say, go get to know the other person. And you'll be shocked when people start to say, hey, this person loves to go on vacation. I didn't know people of this, background like vacations. It's like, no, it's not just you, Sherlock. Like, come on here.
And
Or,
I love
hey,
that you included this list too, because for me, I love connecting with people. Like I genuinely, like I am fueled by it. Like it fills my cup to get to know somebody. But for some people, like that is so uncomfortable. Like that is so outside of like their comfort zone. So these
mm-hmm.
questions I think are super helpful just to provide a guide for initiating those conversations.
Absolutely. In fact, when people do performance reviews, leaders, when we run sessions for them, I say, ask people if they are comfortable, bring their resume, or you can ask them something as simple as, hey, what skill set have you not tapped into? Or what have you learned lately that you think could add value? You will be shocked by how many trainings people have gone on in 1 year or in a quarter, or how they're looking to grow themselves. But you wouldn't know it if you don't connect with them, if you don't empathize, if you don't ask questions, if you don't build trust. That's
Mhm.
why sometimes organizations tend to plateau because we're not tapping into that 66% or into
Mhm.
that 34% waste, excuse me. My challenge to you, can you grab lunch or coffee with someone on your team? Can you go online and learn about someone else's culture and chat with them? Hey, I learned this. Hey, if you're wrong, guess what? They'll correct you and say, nah, that's not really how it is. That's stereotyping. This is something else. Oh, it's a chance for you to learn that.
Mhm.
But take the initiative. Be vulnerable and curious. Learn about them, share about your life as well. All right. So, what actions can you take to build better connections, whether with a client, with potential clients, or with team members at the workplace? So, it's 140. Let me fly through the last four. Willing to coach. What do I mean by that? For you to tap into the 34% waste, for you to be able to achieve high potential, you must be willing to coach others. I was told once by one of my coaches, "Hey, Aya, do you know when you don't dress well for presentations, um, your executive presence level can diminish significantly simply by just that one thing?" I was like, "Oh, okay." I was an entry level personnel at that point. I didn't know what he was talking about.
Sure.
Or, hey, do you know that if you smile, when you walk through the office, you seem to be more welcoming, Io? And people will probably approach you a bit more. Like you frowning and looking like you hate the world. Like, come on, can you work on that? I mean, those are just simple examples. There is so much more. Hey, if you work on your formula this way on Excel, are you aware that you can increase productivity? Or hey, if you do this, if you try this, we can help people do more with what they have. We can help them tap deeper into what they have. Timothy Galloway says coaching is unlocking a person's potential to maximize their own performance. And there's so many stories around this that I can share. How about that new person that joined your organization that is not willing to connect with people within the first 90 days? And you, on the other hand, you did it before, but you saw the benefit of it and you're able to coach them through that process. But their question is, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. What do you can work them through that process? Or I've heard stories of newcomers or individuals who from a previous culture, they maybe came from a yelling culture, but then they come into your organization and they continue that culture. And you're
Oh,
like,
jeez.
not here. It has actually happened. I've seen people do it before. In fact, I know of an organization that let go of an individual simply because of his behavior. But my feedback was, did you ever give that person, did you coach that individual?
Mhm.
That person wasn't given a chance. I'm like, if you didn't give them a chance, if you never coached, and you're letting go, we are taking the easy way out. We must be willing to be able to have those courageous conversations, challenge the person, have the crucial conversation, and help them to unlock their potential.
Mhm.
So there's so many areas and ways that this could be done as well. So who in your organization could benefit from your mentorship? Who within your organization could benefit from your coaching? Who needs just a few tweaks here and there for them to grow and get better?
And I love that this, like, to me, what I'm hearing from you is feedback. Like, that's one
Yep.
term that obviously is a buzzword just in business is feedback. But I love that it's framed as coaching,
Mm-hmm.
because that's essentially what we're doing here in coaching. But you as a leader, I feel like this is really important for you to provide a platform for that to be able to happen in a psychologically safe way for your entire team. Like that is so key, so key, because if you're
Absolutely.
not taking the initiative as the leader in order to do it, because coaching, like, oh, I think if you've participated in sports, you've probably had a bad coach. Like, I've had a bad coach. Like, it can happen badly. You could do this bad. Like, there's
Yep.
work that still has to happen in terms of in order to be a good coach too. So I think that's important to point out.
To
There
point out,
needs to be
yeah.
a platform that can happen regularly for your team.
Absolutely. And there are two types of coaching. There is the on the spot coaching, which is providing the feedback and the nudges. And then there's the long term coaching, whether you're an executive coach, a life coach, a business coach, and you're working with someone over a longer period of time. You meet with them regularly. It's more formal. Either way, individuals need your coaching to be able to help them unlock their potential.
Mm-hmm.
The fourth one is willing to build psychological safety. If you don't have psychological safety, people will not feel open to share their thoughts, provide feedback to you. Amy Edmondson wrote a book called Fearless Organizations, phenomenal book with a lot of stories, a lot of case studies around why this is important. But I love this definition, the belief that you can speak up, you can take risk, you can put forward ideas, questions, or challenges without facing ridicule or retaliation. It's a shared belief that the team is safe for interpersonal risk taking. If you have an individual on your team who has ideas but is afraid to share it, you are losing out on potential profitability. And there's a perfect story around this. I have a friend who was the VP of an organization. I think it was a VP of IT or something. And he was having a conversation with the CEO. And he just simply brought up, in the midst of their conversation, an idea that he was working on with his team. And the CEO said, "Oh, that's interesting." And he's like, "Yeah, but it's a silly idea anyway." And he said, "No, no, no, share more with me." And he shared more. And the CEO said, "Oh, what if we tweaked it this way? How about we work on it this way? You know what? Can you try that? Let's come back next week and let's look at it together." They worked on that idea for 4 weeks together. After working on that idea, they turned it into a product. That product last year made them $60 million as an
Wow.
organization.
Wow.
60
That's
million,
massive.
exactly, $60 million. Why? Because a CEO was, first of all, because a staff member was willing to speak up and
Mm.
share a stupid random idea that they're working on in their departments. Number two, a CEO was willing to take out 5 minutes out of his one-on-one to say, you know what? No, 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 that's not stupid. Share more. Let me hear more about that. That became their number one revenue spot post the pandemic as well. So they got rid of
Wow.
everything else that they were doing. They started to focus on that area simply because someone was willing to take a risk, to speak up, to put forward an idea without the fear of facing ridicule or retaliation. I saw this at Forbes.com. An article that I read talks about how 62% of employees don't trust their leader. And I was like, wait, what?
Wow.
If you
It's a
don't
big number.
trust that's a big number. If you don't trust your leader, how do you share ideas? How do you bring forth things? How do you go, I'm thinking about something. It's not fully fleshed out yet. How would you do that? In fact, there are many case studies in that book that Amy Edmondson wrote that just talks about how individuals lied. Think about the Volkswagen emissions scandal and several other scandals that have happened where managers, mid-level managers, lied to their leaders because of the fear of retaliation. So they just simply lied just to get by. But psychological safety is a big thing. I'll encourage you to take a screenshot of this. It's an opportunity. You can send these questions to your team members or at your next meeting. Hey, just want to see how we are in terms of psychological safety. Would love your thoughts around this. And get people's feedback. If you don't feel they'll be comfortable with it, that tells me there's a little psychological safety, perhaps. That's warning number one. You can have them do this anonymously and share with you later on as well. So that is that. And let me go through the last two in 2 minutes. I'm going to fly through these two really quickly. Willing to hold important conversations. I've had someone share this with me during a session. Are we saying we should lower our standards to accommodate diverse people or immigrants? I've had that come up. No, by the way. Are we saying we have to fire staff workers so that we can be more diverse in what we're doing? No, that's not what we're saying. But these are questions that people have in the back of their minds. And if they don't ask, they're still going to hang on to it and their behaviors are not going to change. So we must have important conversations with our team members. A poll revealed that 80% of workers are running in fear from at least one critical conversation at work. We're avoiding one another. We're not talking to one another. Who is that person at the workplace who is a legacy worker who has been there for a while? Maybe they bring in a lot of money for the company, but they're always offensive. And we all have a way of excusing them. Oh, that's just the way he is, or the
Mm-hmm.
way she is, or the way they are. Oh, we need to be excusable. No, you need to hold important conversations and stop being afraid of doing that. You're a
Mm-hmm.
leader. That's what we're all called to do. 72% of employees feel that their performance will improve if managers were to provide action and feedback to them and hold those critical conversations as well. So, who on your team needs to hear this? Who on your team needs to have that conversation with you? And then lastly, and I promise you I'm done, Hannah. And then please, by the way, we've not seen any questions. Throw your questions into the chat in the Q&A. I'm sorry we've not brought that up. The last one is willing to be humble and vulnerable. I don't care who you are, CFO and all that, but you ain't all that in a bag of potato chips. We're all human. We're not all perfect, okay? No one is perfect. We're not all that, or you ain't all that, as Dr. Evil would say. But I love this quote around humility. Humble leaders understand they're not the smartest person in every room. You don't need to be. You hired smart people. Let them shine as well. They encourage people to speak up, respect differences of opinion, and champion the best ideas, regardless of whether they originate from top executive or production line employee. What is the mindset of a humble leader? You don't have all the answers. You can learn from others. Education goes beyond just eloquence, knowledge, skill, exposure, and experience. Just because someone has an accent does not mean they have lower education or they're not smart. I recognize others for their efforts. I do not boast. And as a leader, like Simon Sinek advises, I speak last. So I want to just take a pause there. And I don't know, maybe I can stop sharing so people can see our wonderful faces. I know you still have some other slides that you also had that you wanted to go through, but those are the 6 key skills that we can all learn. They sound simple, but most of the time, it's the most simple things that we don't do.
Mm-hmm.
When you
It
don't do
is.
your bookkeeping on a regular basis, it causes problems at the end of the day. So it's the simple things that we skip that can lead to so many more complications later on. Focus on these things, do them daily, do them very well with your team members, and you can start growing as a leader, as an individual. And then we can start talking about your culture. And then we can start talking about all those other things, the systems in your organization, but it starts with you. With
And I
that said,
love
I
that
want to say,
you've given us so many things that we can take away and we can start doing today. We can literally invite somebody to coffee in our organization today. That is something that we can walk away from this conversation implementing within our organizations. So I love everything that you've given us because it's just so tangible and actionable. And I think that's things that a good leader, at least I know, is looking for in terms of things that they can do and levers that they can pull to have more leverage in their business and with their profitability and with their team. So thank you so much for sharing all of that with us. I am going to just share my screen to wrap us up on the webinar. So Io, please let us know how can our audience connect with you outside of this webinar? What's the best way for that?
absolutely. You can go on my website, iowood.com. It's right on the screen. My email address is there as well. Add me on LinkedIn so that at least we can be able to have a conversation. You can purchase the book as well. It goes in more depth into those 6 key areas with a lot more examples. And if you're ever interested in us doing any work together or training together, you can reach out any of these ways and we can further our conversation.
Fantastic. And obviously, there we go. And so, for our listeners, if you want to keep learning, there's lots of content as well on our podcast, the Virtual CPA Success Show. You can tune into that anywhere podcasts are found, but we also stream those on YouTube, as well as this replay will be on YouTube as well, which is youtube.com/Summit CPA Group. We also have a blog where we'll post information periodically if you want to keep up with us in terms of the different conversations that are happening behind the screen that you could benefit from as a leader in your organization. So feel free to subscribe to that as well. And then we also have a free ebook. You can screenshot this. You can use this QR code to download that, and it will give you the download link for the role of dynamic forecasting and ensuring business growth. As we know, is super valuable. So I appreciate, again, you being on this webinar with me, Io, and I'm looking forward to connecting with you more outside of this. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Anna. It's been a pleasure being here. Thank you for having me.
Bye-bye.